Welcome to In Focus. I'm Loretta Boniti. In Focus is continuing its Spotlight series today, a chance for us to learn more about lawmakers on both sides of the aisle, how they shape their opinions on policy, and try to serve their constituents' needs. This week, that spotlight is on Republican U.S. Senator Thom Tillis.
How you doing, Max?
It's a Tuesday morning in August, and Congress is in recess.
Thom Tillis. Good to meet you.
But lawmakers are on anything but vacation.
Let me know what, in the Inflation Reduction Act in particular, energy-related policies, you don't have to deal with all of it, what you consider green makes sense, good for the industry. Yellow probably makes sense, needs some refinement. Red makes no sense, makes your job more difficult. You all have to be, you're going to be embracing it.
North Carolina Senior Senator Thom Tillis is starting his day at the Energy United Dispatch Center in Statesville. He says check-ins like these are important ones, a refresher course and reminder about utility needs, something he says he needs to stay on top of for every single constituent across the state.
Well, you actually see how how things come together. You know, a lot of people just turn on a light switch and they don't think about what it takes to actually make that light come on. And if you take a look at these co-ops, they serve citizens across the state of North Carolina, across the country. They're businesses. They've got to worry about reliability. They're worried about a lot of public policies either helping or hurting them, and ultimately helping or hurting the residences and the businesses in their service area. So you can't learn this from a book. Do you monitor cyber threats here?
Oh, yeah.
And this is a lot of this is input from SCADA systems, right?
Energy United is a co-op that serves 19 counties. Tillis was at the dispatch center just days after Tropical Storm Debbie hit the state, and the center played a crucial role keeping the lights on for folks. He got a first-hand look at how the center serves its members, but also a chance to talk about what is working and what isn't when it comes to federal regulations and funding.
I am trying to build a case for even people who have to acknowledge that what they did was not ready to take out of the oven with the Inflation Reduction Act. So I need that information regardless of what happens in November, because we've got to fix it.
The stop is informative, and he says he takes the information and files it away for when he heads back to Washington.
The United States is one of the leaders in the world in the history of electricity in terms of making sure that light comes on when you turn that switch on. We've got to make sure that we implement policies that keep that streak alive. Well, thank you all.
Next stop, Winston-Salem.
What partnerships do you think we need more of in particular?
A fentanyl and public safety roundtable.
To me, a good meeting are things that when we walk away, we talk about specific things that we can help out with.
It was a table full of folks fighting to overcome the drug problems in the state, from those who work in the addiction arena to prosecutors, top law enforcement officials, and even one candidate looking to join him in Congress next year.
And when you get them all together and they start talking, that's when you start coming up with good ideas that to the extent federal legislation is required or federal resources, I need to take back to Washington and gain support for it.
He says an hour isn't enough time to solve the problem, but it is enough time to get a good conversation going and ideas to be put on the table. So you come to an event like this, which is obviously super serious topic, super big topic. What can you accomplish in an hour sitting at a round table like this?
I think what you do is pick up directional sort of signals. Like today, I'm hearing increasingly that if you could only solve one thing, maybe you need to focus on the delivery of about a third of the fentanyl in this region, and it's probably true nationwide, through the U.S. Postal Service. Most people don't realize that a lot of these drug traffickers are hiding in plain sight. So you look at what kind of tools do we need to help the Postmaster General and the U.S. Postal Service. That's one that I can go take as purely federal.
Tillis' day is still not done. He needs to move on to another completely different topic, food insecurity, and the big challenges that come with that.
One of the amazing things about this job is everything that you learn. This morning I was at an electrical co-op talking about how they are monitoring their grid and keeping electricity flowing to businesses and residences. I'm coming here talking about the fentanyl epidemic and how we can get ahead of it, and then I move on to the next one. If you don't like diversity, this job is not for you. But if you do, in many respects, it's very similar to what I did as a career. Different project, different subject matter, different clients.
In his typical joking fashion, Tillis arrives at the Second Harvest Food Bank of Northwest North Carolina. He is now into over 6 hours of his day.
So how does the funding work to fit the need? I mean, are you able to satisfy fewer people, or have you just gotten smarter on other ways?
There is a massive warehouse full of food at this Winston-Salem facility. This serves as a home base for 18 counties as they work to meet nutritional needs for everyone, especially those who cannot afford to put a healthy meal on the table.
Now, how much of your food here is donated versus acquired?
While the shelves are stocked, they are also emptied quickly. The food bank with a list of federal asks for Senator Tillis, including passing a new farm bill to ensure SNAP, TANF, and other anti-hunger programs.
I've been cooking since I was about 13 years old, and cooking, in quotes, professionally at restaurants since I was about 14. And I love getting in the kitchen and cooking.
Well, you would appreciate this, and these are some of our students.
But this community resource does more than provide food. This facility also has a program near and dear to Senator Tillis's heart, training folks so they can begin careers in the restaurant industry. He loves his time in the kitchen.
Well, the other reason I like cooking for myself is I can pick while I'm cooking.
Oh, yeah.
You can't really do that here, but like I'm just picking out his stuff and testing it as I go.
It's his last stop before heading home for today. But this is just one day of a month-long hiatus from Washington. Weeks filled with community outreach like this for Senator Tillis.
You know, some people in the press, I won't necessarily say you, say we're on vacation. But if you're a serious legislator, you're working a lot harder when you're on recess than you ever do in Washington. I mean, you're out here traveling the state. Last week, I was in the western part of the state. The week before that, I was over in Wilmington and then Murphy. Last week, I'm in the midsection of the state, and it's like a windshield wiper. We'll go back and forth between now and Tuesday after Labor Day.
And Senator Tillis is joining us now. Thank you so much for being with us. When you look back now, you've been in politics now you're getting close to
18 years.
I was just going to say, you're getting close to the 2-decade mark for it. Did you ever see yourself being in this arena for this long?
No, not really. I mean, I consider myself an accidental politician. I'd always thought I'd be in public service in some form or fashion, but more, I think, local. Being in the Senate was not something I had on my bucket list or priorities to get done in my career.
Well, there's a lot of issues, obviously, that you deal with being in the Senate. We're going to talk about those. But first, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This week, we're talking with North Carolina U.S. Senator Thom Tillis as part of our In Focus Spotlight series. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
So let's talk about some of these big issues that you're working on. First, let's talk about the bipartisan infrastructure law. This is one probably almost all of our viewers tangibly are seeing something in their community from this.
Yeah, about approaching $13 billion coming to the state of North Carolina. I was just in Wilmington yesterday where we're celebrating $250 million, about half of what it's going to take to upfit the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge, $100 million for the Alligator River Bridge. Every county, every state every county in the state is benefiting from this bill, $1 billion in connectivity for broadband. So it's proving to have the impact that I thought it would. That's why I was willing to take the hits to get it done.
I was just going to say, bipartisan, right in the title of this one. But this is one that you helped to negotiate, right, and get this one passed.
Well, that's right. I mean, you had a lot of people that were pushing back. There were people saying it was fake infrastructure. Clearly, when you do something bipartisan, there are some things in it that you don't like, and that, quite honestly, I think that we can go back and potentially repeal. But there's no mistaking that the hard infrastructure is the majority of this bill, and we're seeing it demonstrated. If we had been scared away by people saying you're working on a fake infrastructure bill, we would have missed an opportunity to put $500 billion in real infrastructure in this country, which is desperately needed. We're not only talking about net new infrastructure, but we have hundreds of bridges in this state that are at risk of being classified as unsafe. This is going to fix those bridges. It's going to expand capacity. It's doing everything that we thought it would when we set out to do it. And quite honestly, the critics have just been proven wrong.
Speaking of bipartisan, let's talk about that other bipartisan bill, the Bipartisan Safer Communities bill. You mentioned being in Wilmington.
Yeah.
You've been around the state talking to folks about using the money from this bill.
Yeah, the Safer Communities Act is the single largest investment in mental health in the history of this country. Back in the late 60s, the federal government decided they wanted to get out of warehousing people. They were basically sending people with behavioral health problems, mental health problems into institutions and doing nothing for them. Well, they got rid of the institutions, but they didn't fulfill the promise to actually provide more facilities closer to the population. And that's exactly what this bill does. And I'm working very hard to make sure that everyone understands a full implementation of this bill is transformational. And I think North Carolina's on pace for being one of the most successful states to implement it.
I feel like when you talk about mental health right now, coming out of the pandemic, folks are a lot more cognizant of it today, of knowing what facilities are available, knowing what resources are available. So this is coming at a time when people are looking for it.
It's at a perfect time, and we're making progress on a challenge that still exists, and it's the stigma of mental health. I spend a lot of time trying to explain to everyone that we have to recognize it's just another physiological challenge. It's not a choice to be bipolar. It's not a choice to be depressed. It's something in your brain chemistry that medical science has proven we can address with proper therapy and with proper access. And going around the state, making sure that we do our part to let folks know, use all of the above approaches to providing health care to those in need for behavioral health problems. But you have to have a brick and mortar presence. You also have to have a virtual presence.
Right.
There are a number. We've seen a lot of pilots, particularly in the VA, where the first time a veteran is encountering, they may have a behavioral health problem, they're more comfortable talking with somebody on a screen than necessarily going into a facility. We want an all of the above approach. That's what works best.
We should also mention there's money in there that helped fund 988. There's money in there for the school safety measures. This isn't just about some of these typical mental health. No, it's an expansive bill. It includes money for drug courts, for veterans courts, for family courts. I mean, it's really addressing all of the different ways that you may encounter people in crisis. You know, there's in the same bill, there's school safety provisions in it. There's what I think are common sense enhancements to background checks for people under the age of 21 so that their juvenile criminal history and behavioral health history is actually, until this bill was passed, I don't think many people would understand that until this bill was passed, you could have an 18-year-old on their birthday go in and purchase a gun, and it's as if they were 1 day old. If they'd committed a serious crime months earlier, it would not have counted as a disqualifying event. That same crime, if they'd committed a year later, would have. So this is just common sense legislation that I think is aging well. And again, the critics were just dead wrong. All that they said was in this bill have been disproven. The benefits of the bill are being measured every single day across the country. Well, we have more to talk to you about, but we do have to take another quick commercial break. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back. This week we're talking with U.S. Senator Thom Tillis as part of our In Focus Spotlight series. And thank you so much for staying with us. We talked about some of the things that we're seeing here on the home front in the last segment. Let's talk about foreign affairs, because there's a lot going on overseas that folks here in the United States are really invested in what's going on.
Well, I mean, if you take a look at it, I'm the Republican leader for the Senate NATO Observer Group, so I'm following a lot of what's going on in Europe, particularly in Ukraine, and modernizing our NATO posture, I should say. And then in the Middle East, since October the 7th and the attack on Israel, we're in a very volatile time. It's almost as if the level of the intensity, I should say, of the fight in Israel, of the fight in Ukraine, is lost on a lot of people. But every single day, people are dying in Ukraine. And every single day, rockets are being launched towards Israel. Now that the intensity has shifted away from the Gaza Strip up into Lebanon, the northern border of Israel, but it's a very serious and very, very dangerous time. And it's the worst possible time for anyone to equivocate on the United States support for Israel. So I've had protests at my home the day before Christmas Eve. How dare me support Israel? I say, how dare you support Hamas? So if someone who's pro-Palestinian wants to talk to me, you have to stipulate that Hamas cannot be a part of their future. They have devastated the Palestinian people. They have responsibility for what's occurring in Gaza.
I also want, while we're talking about other countries, I wanted to talk about your bill to deport non-citizens who are convicted of crimes while protesting. This is a piece of legislation that you've put in.
Yeah,
we talk about immigrants in a lot of different ways. Why is this one important?
Well, look, if you're talking about people who are illegally present, and then, so they've broken the law getting here, and then they have the audacity to show up and protest and potentially damage property and think that we're going to slap them on the wrist and let them go back into the communities. I think it's absurd. I think regardless of whether you're a Democrat or Republican, just let that sink in. Someone comes across our border, breaks our laws, is here illegally, and then protests and potentially damages facilities, and to think that we would allow them to stay here, that sends the wrong message to other people who may choose to do the same things.
What do you think about the political environment that we're in today?
I've had people ask me, when did things get so nasty? I think shortly after George Washington left the White House. The difference here is we have the amplifier and we have a mobilization capability that we didn't have before. With social media, you can create these flash protests. You can mobilize people. You can lie to people and get them agitated over something and then get them out there. That's why I think it's so important for people like me and others to cut through it. The reason why being bipartisan is so difficult today is that people can spread what I think are blatant lies in some cases about what we're trying to accomplish, and it just causes people to be very careful and not take risk. And I think that the American people suffer when we do that. We're up there to make changes. We're not up there to get reelected. That's something you have to deal with, in my case, every 6 years. We're up there to solve problems, to do the things that we promised that we were going to do. And very seldom can you get anything big done on your own on a partisan basis. And that invariably means that the Democrats are always going to attack me, right? Because I'm a Republican.
Yeah.
You've got to be prepared to be attacked by Republicans if you really want to push the envelope and get the most possible things you can get done for the people in North Carolina and the United States. And I'm in it. I'm in it for that reason and that reason alone, not to simply get reelected so that I can be a senator for another 6 years.
Can somebody get reelected in this political climate that will put their name on a bipartisan bill?
I think so. This is not. I had a reporter ask me shortly after I got up to D.C. I forget what bipartisan bill I was working on, but say, at what point did you become bipartisan? And this was somebody who'd covered me when I was in Raleigh. Yeah. I said, I've been working on bipartisan bills since the first 6 months that I was in the legislature. I have done bipartisan stuff. I have gotten reelected. What you have to do, though, is just because I'm bipartisan doesn't mean I'm going to be kind in the face of a false claim. I'm a very direct person. If somebody wants to come and talk to me about the bipartisan infrastructure bill or the Safer Communities Act or respect for marriage or any other bill, be loaded with your best facts, because I'm there to defend what I think is sound legislation that's going to age well. That's what we should all be doing when we go to Washington, not playing it safe and not playing it to the crowd where you get the standing ovation wins and you feel good about yourself. Because if you're getting all that, that means you're really not pushing the envelope. You're not taking risk. And if you're not doing that, you're not doing the best you can possibly do for your constituents.
Senator Thom Tillis, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining our conversation as we focus in on the big issues facing North Carolina. We'll be back here next week with another edition of In Focus. Until then, have a great week.